Congressman Devin Nunes, the top Republican on the House Intel Committee, has been a kind of chief conspiracy theorist during the impeachment inquiry, using both his official position and his spot at the microphone to advance the very conspiracy theories President Trump was asking Ukraine's President Zelensky to pursue, debunked claims about the 2016 election, as well as manufactured dirt on the Bidens. And now there's this weird new development from Giuliani's indicted associate Lev Parnas, who is saying that he helps Nunes set up meetings to pursue those very same conspiracy theories. Nunes, who has literally sued a cow on Twitter, has made vague references that he'll be filing a lawsuit over all these Ukraine stories, which seems to be his go-to move. But on the question of whether he met with the corrupt former Ukrainian prosecutor Viktor Shokin, as asserted by one of Parnas' attorneys, Nunes never directly answered, though he called the story demonstrably false.
Bottom line, were you in Vienna with Shokin?
Yeah, so look, Maria, I really want to answer all of these questions. And I promise you I absolutely will come back on the show and answer these questions. So none of this is true. That's what I've said. My statement is it's demonstrably false. We'll get to all the facts when it's filed in court.
Today, New York University law professor Ryan Goodman, who's co-editor-in-chief at Just Security, put together a comprehensive timeline of Nunes and Ukraine disinformation efforts, and he joins me now. Good to have you here. So I guess broadest view, right? Like, what do we know about what role Nunes has played in essentially sort of furthering, researching, fomenting the sort of main storylines that are the subject of the impeachment hearing and in that phone call with Zelensky, that there was a Ukrainian effort essentially to hack the DNC server and frame Russia, and that, that there's some deep corruption, rot, illegal activity vis-a-vis the Bidens?
So the allegations seem to be that that's exactly what Nunes himself was trying to do from late November 2018 to at least late March 2019, which is to try to get dirt on Joe Biden and to try to get this corrupt former prosecutor in Ukraine, Shokin, to also give information about, Ukrainian interference in the 2016 election. So the very matters that are at the heart of the impeachment inquiry, not the necessarily quid pro quo or pressuring the Ukrainian government, right, but still searching for manufacturing this kind of dirt.
I mean, the broad view here, there's two things. One is that you've got these sort of disgruntled ex-Ukrainian prosecutors who are sort of selling a story to Rudy Giuliani and others in the sort of right-wing media because they have a sort of personal interest, I think it's fair to say. Right. And there's questions about whether Nunes was actually directly interfacing with them as part of his own gathering of information.
That's right. So it would be explosive enough if all we were left with was the very first report from the Daily Beast that Nunes was coordinating with Lev Parnas, so this Giuliani associate who's indicted. And this associate, Lev Parnas, is saying that he's willing to testify under oath with Congress, and he has recordings, audio, and otherwise, and documents that will prove that he was doing all this. One, speaking with Nunes directly, speaking with Nunes' top aide, Derek Harvey. Then there's this other piece that came out over the weekend, CNN, and then backed up by the Washington Post, that Nunes actually has his top aide, Derek Harvey, meeting privately with this group, this kind of cabal of Giuliani, Parnas, Fruman, John Solomon, the opinion columnist at The Hill that's promulgating all of this disinformation. And one thing that's also remarkable is that John Solomon confirms the meetings, which is something that you wouldn't have thought he would have done. So it's not just Lev Parnas.
Wait, Solomon has now confirmed the meeting that the meetings existed.
CNN, in their initial report, says John Solomon's one of these people that privately meets regularly, like frequently, multiple times a week at this private room in Trump International Hotel in Washington. And then there's this line. John Solomon says he confirmed the meetings, but he said it wasn't a team because it formed more organically than that. Okay. But that's incredible, because that really is the disinformation effort that's underway, that's been underway this whole time, that George Kent testified was just a bunch of lies, that was trying to oust the U.S. ambassador and was trying to promulgate these ideas about dirt. I don't want to say find dirt. It was actually to manufacture dirt. And there in these meetings is Derek Harvey dropping in occasionally.
Who is a Nunes staffer?
Top aide.
So you have, basically you have Nunes up there sort of doing this, promulgating it from the microphone, but it also appears that there's both some confirmed reporting and allegations that he's intimately involved with the whole crew, like the team, basically, of people that are running this operation to essentially spread this kind of disinformation and achieve the ends that the president wants out of Zelensky in the phone call.
That's right. So it's just bad on its own terms, and then it's much worse given that we've just gone through 2 weeks of an impeachment inquiry, public hearings, and not a peep from Nunes that he's actually implicated.
Okay, so that to me is the crazy thing. Like, I feel like a member of Congress can travel where he wants to travel and talk to who he wants to talk to. Member of Congress, he can, if he wants to talk to Victor Shokin, he can talk to Victor Shokin. If he wants to, you know what I mean? Like, he's a member of Congress. He could do that. It's crazy if that stuff happened. He doesn't say a thing about it while he's sitting there in the impeachment hearing.
Unbelievable. And
while they're testifying about like all this stuff, there's all this disinformation, where it's coming from. And here's this guy, and here's that guy, and here's this. And he's just sitting up there being like, oh, yeah, I met with all those people.
Right. And one of the other things he does is he actually enters into the congressional record one of John Solomon's articles. So it's a remarkable thing. And just another piece of it is that he's not, like you said, he could do this potentially out in the open.
Right.
But he, in fact, apparently, according to Lev Parnas, takes the trip in December of 2018 because then he wouldn't have to report the details of it if it were after the new Congress was in power, because then his chairperson would be Adam Schiff. And there is, in fact, in the congressional travel records, Nunes and his team with Derek Harvey going to Vienna late November to December 3rd, 2018, but they don't say, sorry, to Europe, but they don't say where they went to. That's why he won't say on Fox News, were you actually in Vienna? Did you meet with Shokin? It's an easy thing to just say no.
Fascinating. Well, I don't know who's telling the truth here, but at some point I think we will find out definitively. This is a thing that we're going to know or not. Ryan Goodman, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.